I need some traction. You need some traction.
Hey everyone, Lloyd Lobo here, co-founder at Boast AI and Traction Conf. Today's session is brought to you by Boast AI, Traction Conf in partnership with BCF Ventures, Lazaridis Institute, Founder Institute, and great to have HubSpot in the house here. We had a long-standing relationship with HubSpot. I think they've been to every conference we've hosted since 2014 with Mark Roberge, former CRO at HubSpot. So yeah, it's exciting to have HubSpot in the house. The content is always first rate, and I personally walk away with a ton of learnings. I also get a ton of great feedback from the audience after a HubSpot speaker has presented. So it's always on my top priority every year, at least for the big conference, to have someone from HubSpot. And couldn't have found a better speaker, I think, than Lou here, VP Product and GM of the HubSpot Sales Hub, and he's going to tell us what it means for sales teams to deliver a frictionless selling experience and find success through uncertainty in a post-pandemic world, which we're all dealing with. Is like, how do we rethink our sales philosophy? There's a lot of anxiety for sales reps. How does the go-to-market strategy needs to change? What are the challenges? How do you prepare for 2021? I think, 2020 has been sort of like a mulligan year, but you're going into 2021 now. We're in Q4 and December is around the corner. How do you plan for 2021? So Lou is going to share all of that stuff with us as he's built a big organization himself. So Lou, thanks for joining us. How are you in Corona times?
I am good. I am glad to be here. I'm feeling the pressure of all the past HubSpot folks who've been around, but I'm feeling good.
Awesome. I think you're gonna do just great, and I'm excited for this phase. How did you get started in product? And you have experience across product and growth and sales, but how did you get to where you are today?
Let's see. Like most people, I sort of stumbled in. I thought I was going to be Don Draper and be like an advertising person, and then I found myself in marketing at a really small company. I did I implemented CRM. I went to the trade shows. I did everything at the small company. I moved into strategy consulting. I got really sick of that, and then I went to a company called Log Me In, and that's where I really learned product. That was probably 10 years ago. I started running a product called Join Me that we launched that was really, really hot for a while, learned a bunch of stuff. I think Zoom ended up maybe winning the collaboration battle that we had with Join Me. They did pretty good coming out of that. I've been in the startup world. I went to a company called Localytics for a few years. That was a pretty hot mobile company that was doing well for a while there. And then I started running the sales teams there. I'd been in product for a while, and I started running sales and marketing. And that was a really nice transition to HubSpot because they were looking for somebody to lead product for their CRM and sales products. And so I had just felt all the pain of like all the tools you have and the grind of trying to hit a number and being on the phone with like Humana, some like healthcare company at 12:30 a.m. trying to get a deal closed like before New Year's or something like that. So a lot of craziness. I feel the pain of salespeople. It's way more fun to be on the product side of it, though, I've found. So I don't know. Here I am. It's been good.
Excited for this. And Lou, take it away.
I am leading our sales and CRM products here at HubSpot. I think you all probably know HubSpot. For those of you who don't, I'm going to do 10 seconds. HubSpot is a company, a software company. We're trying to help millions of organizations grow better. We're doing that with a suite of software for CRM, for marketing. You may know us as traditionally a marketing company. The last 5 years have really been a big jump into the CRM and front office space. And so we spend a lot of time selling to tens of thousands of salespeople and sales teams, from startups to big scale ups. And so have learned a lot along the way. Building a CRM is not easy, but I think we're doing a pretty good job. One of the things we like to say is like, we're trying to pull off the greatest magic trick in SaaS history. Like, it's hard to build a really powerful product that's also easy to use, and that's what I spend a lot of my time on. So that thread sort of comes through here as well, where you want to do everything the right way, but you also want to make sure it's easy. And so I think that's actually a thread for frictionless selling and thinking about the future as well. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk about some of what's happening in the world, right? I think we all kind of know what's happening in the world and the fact that it's changed sales and that we need to rethink things. But really, I think the key is like, what can you walk away with and what can you maybe think about doing differently? So I've got kind of a lightweight framework that you can take back, try some things with, do a little bit of an audit internally, and maybe it'll set you up to do a few things differently next year. And if we can do that, I think that would be a win. So you can, you can reach me at my email, Orfanos at HubSpot. I'm on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn, whatever, if you have questions. So I'm going to get into it. So, okay, I think we know this. The pandemic has changed the way we sell forever. The interesting part is like, maybe that isn't a bad thing, right? And it's because a lot of us have known we need to change the way we sell or change the motion with which we sell for a long time. And there just hadn't been sort of an impetus or an incentive to really do that right away. It's not always clear what the right thing to do is. And so I think we're now at the point where it's become pretty obvious that there's a different expectation coming from buyers. And we've got some pretty good data at HubSpot that talks about that. So I want to share that with you. Along the way through the pandemic, we've been tracking a bunch of behaviors that marketers and salespeople have been taking. And so the first piece of it is marketers have been sending more email. That's the orange bars here. However, the pink is the response rates of those emails, and those are also up. And so not only are we sending more marketing emails, these are like from marketers that are sort of more batch emails, but they're personalized, but we're also seeing higher response rates. Now, if you take the flip side of that and you look at what salespeople have been doing, salespeople also sending more emails, probably more than marketing, but the response rates dipped at the beginning of the pandemic and they haven't come back. And so what the hell is going on? Like, what is going on here? Listen, I don't have the perfect answer, but I think like it has something to do with just like this march of time and the arc of history of sales where, we had this time in the olden days of bartering or carrying a bag around every single day. And now we buy from the couch. And I think maybe we're starting to see some reaction to salespeople that's different than it was before. This isn't really like, this is kind of an obvious point, I think, but it's interesting to see like how it bears fruit in the data. And so like, what do you do if you're a salesperson? It's interesting. As leaders, we need to think about making sure that customer experience and that selling experience is really great. And so in today's market, that's what it's all about. Our CEO has been beating this drum for a while. I think this tweet is from like 2008 or something, or 2018. It's not what you sell, it's how you sell it. Like what you sell is a lot of times table stakes, right? But how you sell it becomes the key and the trick here. So that's interesting to think about. And it's more important during a time of crisis. This I thought was super fascinating. This is a McKinsey study. This is from 2008, the last recession. And so what you're seeing here is companies that were rated as customer experience leaders before the recession and as we went into it, when we came out of it, they outperformed their peers, the laggards, by 3 times in terms of returns for shareholders. That's pretty incredible. It does show you what is going to get you through a time like this. And this time is obviously different than last time. This time may more fundamentally shape the way that we sell than previously. And so I think it's worth noting that if you don't feel urgency to really upend and change things, like you should be feeling it a bit more because it will pay off. Okay, so this like drive for better experience, I think of it also as like convenience. Like we're just trying to get more convenient. You've probably seen a slide like this 100 times. The old way, the next way, and now the new way. And everything is sort of on this drive towards more convenience. That's sort of the way that I'm thinking about it. Like we're all looking for a way to have things be more convenient in our daily lives. And I think about like some of the purchases that we make and how that experience and that need for convenience is just a little bit different depending on what you're buying. So I want everyone to just like stop and look at this and think about all the different things on this page: a toothbrush, maybe an Amazon Echo, buying a new mattress, and then buying a new house. These are all totally, totally different experiences that you're going to have when you buy them, but you like them to all be convenient, I would assume, right? So I look at this and I think, wouldn't it be funny if I was walking down the aisle of a CVS or a Duane Reade looking for a toothbrush and I had like 6 reps swarm on me and say like, can I help you today? Can I show you this one? Can I show you that one? Do you want to do a free trial? Like that just doesn't happen. It's just mismatched with your expectation, right? But that's a little bit more realistic when you're buying a house, right? Or you go to an open house or something like that, or you do a virtual tour, you're going to have somebody on top of you. And so I thought about this, and I thought about this different view of convenience. And we've been trying to put this into a little bit of a framework to help people think about how they can apply it to their day and their businesses. So I want to share with you just like a super simple 2x2. And I think the key here is two vectors. One is how much change is what you're selling presenting to the buyer? And then how much is price a factor? Is it a super high price compared to what they're typically spending, or a really, really low price? And so if you think about something like a toothbrush, I hope all of you already have a toothbrush, right? So it shouldn't be a high change purchase. And it's typically a very, very low price purchase, right? So you have a certain expectation, and I think it's based on those two factors of the experience you need when you buy it. A house is very different, right? It's likely to be a big change, and it's likely to be quite expensive, and therefore you have a set of expectations. A mattress, like you already got a mattress. Probably everyone on this call has a mattress, but it's not but it's very expensive, right? So it's not a lot of change, but really expensive, and so you have different needs. And then something like the Echo, like it's pretty changey to introduce it to your day, but it's not that expensive. And so I think about those things, and I try to think like, how would I treat a customer in a buying journey differently depending on what my product is introducing to those buyers? And so I've sort of categorized them this way. I think if you're buying something like a toothbrush, and if your product looks like a toothbrush, it should be low or no touch, right? No humans. I think if you are selling a mattress and it's something that people understand, but it's expensive, you want to try to make sure you can support them as easily as possible with as much information as possible. You know, if it's something new and changey but cheap, like just give them everything they need, make it low risk for them. And then, you know, when you're buying a house, I think you need a little bit more. Now, that said, people are even buying houses online. If you bought a house online, I'd love to hear about it in the chat, like without talking to an agent or something like that. That'd be really interesting. I think I used to have a car here, and that's kind of gone. People are buying cars online. So I would encourage you to just take a step back, take a beat, and think about, like, if you sell one product, which box is it in? If you sell two products, are they in different boxes? If you sell three, if you sell four, put them in these boxes. And then figure out, is your selling motion really calibrated, at least at a high level, to the way that you think a buyer would want to experience that and what would be most effective for you? So the problem that I see in most B2B, I think most people here are selling B2B for the most part, is that we're doing one size fits all in a lot of cases. So we look at this and we say, oh, that's interesting. We kind of have a sales team. We've got an e-com thing going, but you haven't really been that thoughtful about it, is kind of the thing I find. And the problem with doing this is, like, you know, that you have that one experience. It's also filled with friction. There's friction everywhere in sales. And I really think that we, as buyers in our own right, in our own personal lives, we should be demanding that same experience in B2B, right? And I think you should think about that as you're selling to your buyers. Like, what's happening when they go home at night, or when they're already at home, but they're probably using an app to get their food. They don't have to talk to anybody. They might be getting their groceries delivered. Maybe they bought their car online. And meanwhile, we're still putting them through the ringer. And so that's the thing that I don't think is great. I don't think is sustainable. And I think we need to rethink a little bit more. And so let's talk a little bit about in sales. I'm going to pivot to in sales, and I'll get into like a little bit more of the framework thinking. But if you're in sales and you're trying to evaluate how you're doing, there's friction literally everywhere, right? So when you're in B2B, you're trying to change things. We found that there's three major areas that we think like are in a sales leader's control. First is rep efficiency. A third of reps' day is spent selling. What are they doing the rest of the time? God knows, updating data, going to meetings, getting some trainings that may or may not be working, et cetera. The second is your relationships with your buyers. They are distrustful of B2B salespeople. I think that stat on the email opens is validating of that. It's probably only getting worse. And then my favorite stat of all is sort of in the learning gap and the friction in learning, where half of reps say they are coached, yet somehow 82% of sales leaders claim to be coaching. I'm not a math major or a whiz, but I don't think that can possibly add up. I'm not sure that it works that way. So there's a lot of friction to be found sort of in your sales process. And I think there's one more place to look. And And that's in like the Franken system that you may have created for your teams. Not everybody has this. But we call this a Franken system. This is sort of the thing that you build or that you wake up a couple of years later after buying a bunch of sales technology and you realize that you're actually running something like this, where you buy a CRM and you're like, oh, we really need to do better prospecting. Let me go buy this thing. Or we want to do better proposals. Let me buy this thing. Or we need some reporting or forecasting. Let me buy this thing. We need somebody to come in and wire up some better automation for us. We need some more data inputs. Let's buy them. These are also getting in your way, and these are also causing friction. And so I think that's just a big part of it to be thinking about. So, all right, so you've got friction across the sales team. You've got this bad data, and you're taking this one-size-fits-all approach. And so how can you deliver a really good experience that's going to get you through this pandemic, have you set up coming out of it when this is sort of what's happening? It's just like sort of a recipe for disaster, right? So are you calibrated the right way to the motion people want? Is there big gaps in your selling motions? And what do your systems look like? I think you should be thinking about all those things. Now, we have this thing we call frictionless selling. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I'm going to give you the basics because I think like those will at least get you started. We have a website called frictionlessselling.com. It has some like high-level audit guides and stuff. But what frictionless selling is like, how do you rethink what you're doing in sales to make everything more convenient for both the buyer and your sellers? And I think that's a really important thing to think about. It's not just the buyer. You have to make it easy for your sellers too. And so what we're trying to do here is like, we're trying to fix these 3 friction areas. We're trying to make sure that our reps don't have to be like NASA command center analysts with like all the things in front of them, all the tools they have. We're trying to just make a simplified rep experience so they can get their jobs done. We're trying to move untrusting buyers to be delighted. And we're trying to get managers out of being like spreadsheet junkies and like scenario planning for every little number forecast that they do to become more mentors. Like, how can we do that? It's tough. It's not easy, but that's what we're trying to get to. And so there's a lot of things that you can do, but I do like the idea of going back to this and starting here and saying like, where do our products fall? And how do we go about building an experience that can be better for what the reps need, for what our buyers need, and for how our managers coach? So one of the ways to do that is like build a playbook around it. This is like a little hard to read, and that's kind of intentional because these aren't perfect. But if you are selling something like the purple mattress, right? Let's say you're selling some commodity piece of software that everybody has, and it's kind of expensive, but it's a pretty obvious sale. And you consider yourself in this like streamline and support. Well, there's things you can do to make your reps better for that motion. There's things that you can do better by your buyers. And there's things you can do better for just general learning for both your reps and your buyers. So things like, should your reps be able to man a chat so they can answer questions really quickly? Should you automate renewals because it's not a big change purchase, and if they're going to renew it, it should be pretty easy. They shouldn't have to go through a renewal team. Can you get a customer community to answer questions rather than having reps on staff? There are things you can do to calibrate across all those 3 things depending on your motions. And I've seen customers go through and do this audit. Now, there's depth you can do in rep efficiency. And rep efficiency, one of the things I recommend is like list out the top 10 tasks that you think reps have to do, and then write down how many tools does it take to do them, what is their level of pain, and how much money are you spending on that problem. And across all 10, you're going to run into like some really yucky, ugly things. So that's on the rep side. Do an audit. On the buyer side, I believe that in 5 years, we're all going to be measuring buyer NPS, not customer NPS, but buyer NPS. How was my sales process? How did it go? I think that's something that's going to come into the selling process, and we should start getting ready for that. So we need to start understanding what's working and what's not in these buying cycles from the buyer perspective. I think software needs to start helping. I think we need to start asking. You could probably go back as a leader and do some auditing yourself. And on the learning front, like an easy way to start is like, do you feel really good about your reps' product knowledge right now? Do you feel like they know what to do depending on what type of customer comes in and what type of information to give them? Like there's audits to do everywhere, and just make sure that you know how to place some of these things around. We've done that at HubSpot. I'm going to wrap pretty soon, but we did that at HubSpot. We've looked at sort of all these motions, and we have a lot of products. And so we have products from our whole enterprise CRM suite, right? This is the thing that's like marketing, sales, service, a CMS. It all comes together. If you're an enterprise customer buying that, you are probably ripping out your whole front office. And so we're not going to have you buy that online, most likely. There's a lot of risk there. So we have like really knowledgeable sales reps. We do product training for those sales reps. We have overlay SEs that come in and they're experts at that. We give you dedicated customer success. When we give you case studies, they're not just regular case studies. They're like pretty in-depth, pretty comprehensive. And that's intentional for that segment. Now, our starter products, we've bundled those together, right? So now you buy sales, marketing, service, they're all in one place. They're nearly 100% e-commerce. Our support is mostly on the web. And people want that to be easy. And then on things like our newer products, right? Like our Service Hub product or maybe the enterprise products, if you're only buying one of them, you're buying something new, like we'll give you a free trial. You can cancel anytime. We have a free CRM. You can like go try the CRM. We have this massive sales academy that lets you feel really good about what you're getting into beforehand. And then something like our oldest product is Marketing Hub, right? So if you buy Marketing Hub Enterprise and you're running marketing automation on it, you kind of don't need to talk to your rep to renew it. Like you've got your campaigns moving, just hit renew and make sure you have someone there for when you have deeper questions. So we spend a lot of time taking those 3 friction areas, looking at our selling motions and calibrating the right way. And so I've just worked with a lot of customers to build something like this out. I think this is like a really interesting exercise. The other thing I think this does really well is it forces you to get sales, marketing, and service leadership all together, right? Because you're trying to build a full end-to-end experience for what happens before they buy, what happens when they're buying, and what happens after they buy, and making sure that it's sort of calibrated the right way. So this has a little bit to do with your whole go-to-market, not just sales, but I think there's a lot to learn just from sales teams in there. So that's those are the slides I had. I think if there's questions on that stuff, I think we'll definitely jump in and take them. I feel pretty strongly that like there's a lot of low-hanging fruit there in terms of just the ability to like look through your data, look through what the reps are doing in their tools, talk to your buyers, build out an audit. I have some free tools on this frictionlessselling.com website. They are like really simple audit guides to see how coaching, how buying, how all that stuff is going. So I would suggest you check that out. Pretty simple stuff. I think it's a nice, simple framework to look at. So hopefully that was like a little bit helpful for you all. And
it might be worthwhile for you to share the frictionlessselling.com and just go through some of like those things there. I think that the super tactical stuff, people will find great value in it, if you don't mind.
Yeah, we can do that. Let me see.
I'll curate some of the questions here.
Okay, so we got some pretty simple stuff here. I talked about the...
Yeah, I'll let you screen share. Yeah.
Yeah, I got it. All right. So like this is the rep efficiency one, right? Like we do this with a lot of customers. We didn't fill this out for you, but like if you take a survey of your reps and say like, rank the top 10 activities that you're doing, how much time do you think it takes you? How many tools are you using? What's your pain level? And then I think you get together and make a bunch of recommendations. Like this is super low hanging fruit. If you find a bunch of themes there, this is easy ways to remove friction from your process. And so that's one that I really like, the rep efficiency audit. And like you can obviously tailor this and go a little bit deeper, but at its simplest form, like that's quite easy to do. We have this buyer mapping one as well. And this is like a couple of different things here, but basically like what we've got is you should look at your sales process essentially, right? This is a simple one: qualification, proposal, negotiation, purchase. And then look at the people involved in there and like, what are you doing? Like, where's the friction that lives both in the process this way, and then for specific people in the process? So if at proposal stage, you don't have a proposal tool and it's taking too long and you're getting feedback there, like maybe invest in a proposal tool. If the budget holder is finding friction around buying, maybe you need to figure out a way to simplify your payment process. Maybe that needs to be online. Maybe you need a better quote to cash system or something like that. I think it's just a pretty simple way to look at buying process, decision makers, and just call out friction. And you can actually do this with people who've recently purchased. You can do this with people who are currently in the process if you want to bring them in and sort of share a little bit of like what's going on in your world and how to make things better. It could be a more sort of authentic approach to doing things. And then, you think about your interventions in each of these along the way. The last one is sort of on the coaching. Everybody's got a coaching matrix. I just think about like this really simple one, which is like, all right, there are probably 4 things that every great manager needs to do if they want to move to become like a better mentor. They need to find out how to uncover issues, how to do hands-on reviews, how to provide feedback, and how to build trust. And there is like a 1 to 5 set of behaviors that you can be tracking on this. And so I would ask your VPs, your managers, your reps to do a 360 on your managers and circle the places where they think they're doing good or bad. And so if your manager is a bunch of 3s across the board, you've got a really clear coaching plan, not just that will make your reps better, that will help grow careers for your managers. And so like you see a lot of this where people are maybe really good at building trust and hands-on reviews, but that's just because like they're buddies, right? And they're going to help them make sales. They're not providing actionable feedback. They're not diving in deeper to answer questions. And these are like some simple behavioral things you can check for. Really helps you set a course to get people promoted, to get people better feedback for their reps, things like that. So those are sort of the 3 pieces. There's a few more things on there, but are a little different. But that's kind of where we have a jumping off point for a lot of people. Is like start there, come back, and let's see where that takes you.
Awesome. How does this approach you went through impact your customer acquisition cost and retention cost?
Well, ideally, it shouldn't impact your customer acquisition costs. I think most of this has to do with not the very, very top of the funnel, but the next phase, like mid-funnel, right? And a lot of mid-funnel is more content, behavior. Sometimes it's systems, like certainly, but I think like there's a lot of low-hanging fruit there. And certainly like if you want to change and have like an incredible website that's fully driven by e-commerce, that's going to cost you a lot of money, and you're going to try to do demand, get some demand there. That'll cost you a bunch more money. But if you can focus on mid-funnel, I think like a lot of it is low-hanging fruit. It's systems internal.
What are some pieces of the pie to get a lead all the way from cold to nurture and then get them to buy your service hub? Like what is the, I guess, strategy you guys are following there?
How do we do it?
Yeah, I think that's a good example. That's why I asked, like, what's the newest product?
Yeah, well, I think so. Like the philosophy we have is like very product led in that sales, marketing, service, everything we do is built on sort of this common infrastructure with a common database, common UI, common automation and reporting engine. So if you are going to use our marketing hub and a contact signs up on the website, that contact is the same record that a marketer would see as the salesperson would see. And then that same record would be the same one that is like powering tickets for Service Hub. So I think it's kind of an easy journey to use like the contact record as the place where everything comes together to say like, here's all the web activity, here's the sales activity, and here's the service activity. And it makes a lot of sense, like once you put that into a reporting engine or an attribution engine, or you're trying to do automation to make sure that you trigger the right workflows, seeing it all in one place is really easy. And the fact that we have this underlying CRM, so it ends up being very product led. And so the reps will look at usage a lot of times, right? They'll look really deeply at usage and see, are you spoofing some case management in the notes or something like that? Like, why don't you just use Service Hub and use a real ticketing solution? So it becomes very product led. Our approach is like get you in and use the free CRM, find some value, and then like before you know it, you feel like you should just be using everything because it's all in one place. That's kind of the way we think about it.
You guys have a massive inbound engine at HubSpot, obviously. The questions around like, is cold calling dead? How do you guys treat that? Are people still outbounding? Because I know you guys also have a great product for doing outbound selling. Like, and I think you guys are the leaders in the space. When I think of system of record for marketing, HubSpot comes to mind, right? How is it integrated, or how have you guys integrated it? What do you recommend to startups who are just starting to think about this? Right?
Yeah. Okay. So from like a systems and tooling standpoint, and then I'll talk about like the cold outreach. But it's our belief that you should be able to do, even if you're just starting, you should be able to do your prospecting, your pipeline management, your reporting, and like the closing of deals in one place, right? Like you don't need 5 tools to do that. So we tried to make a very simple way to do that in one place, and that includes, as you get a little bigger, we have things like an outreach product that lets you do nurtures and sort of like sending cadence similar to like an outreach or a sales loft is baked into our product. And you can do outbound dialing because that does still work. I was on a webinar yesterday with someone telling me that they started trying cold FaceTimes and those worked in some cases, which is kind of wild to me. And so I don't know. I don't think the human sort of connection is dead. I think we also believe like where possible, you should be using video. You should be adding value before you extract it. And that means like really good, powerful content, really customized content. And so if you're going to do a cold call, at least like have something to back it up and have something really good. That's kind of our philosophy. We do it internally. Like our reps do outreach. It's typically based on some signals or intent. We don't like have a cold list or anything like that, but there's some signaling about their usage of other tools. They've likely tried something from HubSpot. We have so much content out in the world that like it's very likely somebody's downloaded or used something in the past, and we know that. So it all depends on sort of what's coming into you, but we are very much of the school that you should be adding value before extracting it. And oftentimes that's in content. Oftentimes that's in a rep doing a ton of homework and applying a solution to a problem. And it really just varies.
There's somebody dropped a question here saying, "Hey, HubSpot has too many products, obscure pricing." Actually, I'll defend you guys in that because I'm in the market looking at all the tools right now, and some of the HubSpot competitors I can't even get a demo. You guys have done a great job in trying to coach people on how to be rock stars in marketing and sales, and then driving that from like free content to freemium product. To end to end, then go and buy and whatnot. We started Traction 7 years ago. We bring speakers from some of the fastest growing companies and mostly products that us and our team uses and loves or have used and loved in the past. And one of the biggest things what people don't realize is as they're starting out, you get to product market fit, you initially reach out to people and whatnot. There's multiple phases, right? Like first thing is I'm reaching out to people to test my marketing messaging and essentially to test the messaging that it resonates. But before that, you're reaching out to people to say if they even have this pain point and they're gonna buy it, right? Like it's like, okay, I'm gonna figure out a few target markets. I'm gonna reach out to see if there's a problem. And if I get a certain conversion rate and enough people resonating with it, then I'll build this stuff. Then you have these people using it, they like it, 70-80% of them say if this product didn't exist, I would die. Then you sort of scale your messaging and all of these efforts. And in the past, as I advise a lot of startup founders and talk to a lot of people, they all manage it on Google Sheets and whatnot. But HubSpot has a great CRM, and it's the best way to manage that stuff is like, manage your outreach. Everything is outreach, right? Like you're reaching out to investors, it's outreach. You're reaching out to press, it's outreach. You're reaching out to prospects, customers. Manage that in a CRM, and HubSpot's free. And I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it'll save a lot of pain because right now the pain I'm going through is as we grew the company, it's like data silos, right? Like you have some stuff sitting in like your CRM, and if you don't have a CRM, then you've got like Google Sheets and Google Sheets upon Google Sheets. Like look at it. I'll give you an example. We do 2 webinars a week. We do dinners every other month or every month. In a different city. Now it's stopped, and then you do the big annual conference. We got 60,000 subscribers. Sits in SendGrid, which is great for email. Some of it sits in a CRM. Some of it is in MailChimp. A lot of it is in Zoom because we're doing these webinars. And like it's not all stitched together, right? And like, and the thing is, then you go and pick a CRM that doesn't talk to your marketing automation, and it's a big pain because now then you got to integrate them. And now we've been using Zoho, and it's been great in the past, but like that doesn't really integrate in a very seamless bi-directional way with any of the tools there. So, as a founder, my advice always is find a solution that will help you scale, um, and give you the immediate gratification right now. And so, like HubSpot, it's free, great. And help you graduate and help you scale, because when you get to, like, I got 60,000 subscribers, there's going to be issues like the data is not clean, there's missing fields, there's missing information, and then now you got to go and find a system to get them all these systems to talk together. It becomes a big beast, right? And that's the thing. So my advice to founders is, you're managing everything in Google Sheets, ditch it, use a good CRM. HubSpot has something free. Use it for now. I'm curious. What made you guys get into the CRM space and then now adding services on top, like service space? You're competing with Salesforce effectively.
I mean, a little bit, right? I think what we're trying to do is help customers grow. And so what happens after a lead comes in, right? Like, you have to try to find a way to sell it. And so I don't think we would have built a CRM and sales if we didn't feel like we had a perspective on, like, keeping it easy for the rep, making sure the experience is seamless for marketing. And it didn't hurt that, like, we see a consolidation in the front office, right? I think in a few years, people are probably going to buy their sales marketing service flywheel type software, like, all together. Right now, it's still a little bit siloed. And so we've sort of seen this trend of, like, providing a better experience and doing experience disruption. I think the thing I didn't say in the presentation is, like, I don't know how you do any of this stuff and make a better experience without having, like, the right tools behind it. And so we think we can help you do that because we built it end to end, and you can do everything from, like, lead to creating an advocate in the service hub. And that's the point. I think, like, we really deeply believe that a better customer experience is the way to go. And we really don't think, like, the world of technology is built to do that. And so, like, one of the ways I think about that is, like, okay, the typical buying motion is, like, you go buy a CRM, maybe you buy Salesforce or something, and the first thing you have to do is go figure out what other tools you need to get started. Like, you just can't, like, just get started that way. And so that's, like, what we're trying to do, is just make it possible for you to run your process end to end, make sure it's clean with marketing and sales, and help you deliver a good experience. So I don't know, it was kind of an obvious journey for us. We think about this flywheel from, like, attracting, engaging, and delighting customers. And I don't know how you do that if you don't support it all the way around.
The other thing is experience, right? And I'm not going to sell you guys, but what I've found in my experience is, as software gets more and more expensive, the user experience just gets shittier and shittier and shittier. What's your take on that as a VP product? Why is that?
It's hard, man. I mean, look, if I'm someone, like, you think about how, like, Salesforce and Oracle were born, like, it was like selling IT and making sure they got the story. And so, like, if you ever read, like, a Techery or something like that, you hear about, like, how your culture is just embedded, and, like, the culture of building for IT and features just, like, permeates. And so, I don't know, the way we think about, like, I think we got lucky in that when we started in the sales world, we built a really lightweight app called Signals, and it, like, did your email tracking, and it told you when someone opened an email. And we built on top of that into a tool that reps really loved. And, like, that's the hard part, is, like, getting a tool that reps love. I think the power part, the building the permissions and the scaling things, like, that's kind of easy. Like, anyone can build in, like, a better reporting engine. Like, we're doing that over time, like better CPQ. You can layer these things in. The hardest part is getting a sales rep to, like, enjoy using your tool and actually use it. And it has to be in your DNA. I think it's, like, we're lucky that it's in our DNA right now. When I build a plan, I don't know who's building software here, but, like, when we build our plan out, there will never be a time that there's not a massive theme and portfolio allocation investment for building a better customer experience for the sales reps. And I do that in two ways, if we want to talk product for 1 second. One is that we found that the number one predictor of rep happiness is reliability of the product. So we spent a ton of money investing in reliability, performance, scalability, a lot of resources there. And then part two is, like, we measure rep NPS and adoption of tools like maniacally, and we have teams gold specifically on that stuff. So you have to invest in it and take the rep part seriously. I think it needs to be like embedded in your DNA. And we got lucky in that sense. But you're right. The adoption is the hard part because the temptation is move up market as quickly as possible and add all the complex features to do so. It's typically the motion.
Yeah. And then like do that by acquisition or any other means and try to stitch it all together, and that really destroys the user experience. So I think one of the key learnings as we look into the future is products are becoming more and more experiential. Companies are becoming more and more experiential. I like when in the early days of HubSpot, you guys had the marketing grader.
Yeah.
It was free. And that's also fantastic learning. You hop on to the marketinggrader.com and there was a website grader, and it tells you the grade of your website and SEO.
It seems like broader campaign driven things are working into a low friction world. And so what I mean by that is like I'm seeing customers do, and HubSpot's doing this too. We are casting a wider net than we were before in a lot of cases to a lower friction offering. And so we've done that with like our lower end products. We dropped the price, we cast a really wide net and did it that way. That's like kind of opposite of what you hear a lot of times is like focus on your target, et cetera. And so that's something that has worked is like people are willing to experiment. I have customers, we work with a lot of agencies in our world. And so if you're like an agency selling a service, a lot of times you've looked at your offerings as like retainer based, need to be around forever. A lot of them have rethought and said, we're going to sell a 1 hour consultation online for free or for cheap. And so maybe it's not a wider net in terms of audience, but it's a wider net in terms of like the barrier to entry. And so that's another way to think about it. I think that's been really interesting. Like we're always of the mind that like the more you can double down on value and like putting something out that you may have thought you would have had to charge for before is also really interesting. People will find it if it is valuable. So that's the stuff that I'm seeing. I think I'm hearing a lot more. We're seeing our volume go up in calling, whereas like the performance of like those sales cold emails are going down. At least the calling volume is going up. And I assume that's because maybe the hit rates are hitting a little bit more. So that's something interesting to think about.
Where does LinkedIn fit in the mix for your reps? Are they leveraging a lot, building thought leadership and DMs and whatnot?
Yeah, a lot of reps are doing that. First of all, that's baked right into our tool. So they like kind of have to use it. They do in-mail and connection requests. They are a lot. I mean, our sales reps are like beasts on LinkedIn actually. And like they're posting in a lot of places. It's like pretty thoughtful stuff. Not only are they sharing like authentic stories about themselves, they're sharing like really smart things that they've interpreted from like something we've put out in the product team or something like that. And so it's just different. I mean, I think I wouldn't have thought a lot of our reps would have been doing that. They're taking the initiative on their own. I see them also like finding the people they want to sell to, smart commenting on their posts, like reaching out that way.
We did a great webinar with Jake Dunlap from Scaled a couple of weeks ago, and he walked through 5 plays to get more customers, and LinkedIn was a heavy part of that. And it was like LinkedIn video message, go comment on their post on day 1, comment on their post on day 3, send a LinkedIn video message, like give. And one thing that clicked really is your average prospect that posts on LinkedIn. How many people comment on their posts? It's almost none, right? They're not celebrities. Make them feel like a celebrity, build a relationship, comment on their posts.
Ask your CEO to comment on the post, right? Like things like that. Yeah.
I think it's important to just figure out what's going to get you that customer, map the process of getting that customer, like, map the journey. Like this is the buyer's journey through my product, like from basically awareness to interest, consideration, all the way to sale, and then becoming a recurring long-term customer relationship. So map out that journey, map out all the pieces of content, and then use a singular thing that simply helps you manage that whole process end to end, and it'll save you a lot of pain. As you look back on your career and your life in product and sales, any advice on what you wished you did more of and what you wished you did less of?
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll get like really existential right now, but less of, I mean, like I think a lot of people feel this way, but I feel like I was too worried early in my career about like polish and making sure like things seem like they were okay and like presenting internally. And the biggest learning for me is maybe a great product leader. I think I'm good at it. Is like I just like really lean into the customers. I think like the Ray Dalio, like we're looking for the right answer, and like I don't care how we get there. Take in all the inputs. Like that's something I've learned. It just comes with maturity. And there was a time when I was stubborn. I wanted to be the best and like appear to be the best, and I kind of shedded that at some point. And like you maybe get humbled along the way, but that's really what it is. If I could go back, I'd be like, don't worry about that. Like, I think everybody kind of goes through that, has that moment. Mine probably happened a few years ago. Certainly when you have kids, you get humbled when you're like, you got poop in one hand, you got something in the other hand, like stuff happens there. But that's kind of how I think back on my career a little bit.
Awesome. And going into 2021, any big piece of advice that you've given to your team members and you've seen like your executive team at HubSpot give to the company that you'd like to share?
I mean, I think one of the biggest things that we are thinking about is how do we make sure that we walk the walk when it comes to like creating a fair and equitable world for everybody? And so we're going to try to layer in the way we build product to be inclusive of different needs. We are going to be changing the way that we recruit and where we recruit from. It's really hard to get into product, for example. Never mind if you're like an underrepresented minority or a person of color or something like that. And so that's a big really push for me and for the whole company. I think like finding ways to just be generally more inclusive and better represent our customer base in product and everything we do is just really, really important to us.
Lou, great session here. Thanks so much. I enjoyed this conversation. All Traction participants in our community who are new to HubSpot can get 30% off through that offer. And if you're affiliated with a VC, accelerator, incubator, you could be eligible for up to 90% off. So HubSpot.com/entrepreneurs.
I need some traction.